But the state is not prevented from doing it.
Yeah, but for the states, you have, responsibilities under the law, under the constitution also comes with resources. So when you're doing the sharing of allocation, the federal government receives its allocation based on the quantum of the functions it has to perform. So it has 68 items in the exclusive list, while the states have about 30 items. That in itself, in my view, is problematic because the state is closest to the people. And in sharing duties under a constitutional framework, the question is about the nexus of accountability. Who is better placed to perform this duty, and who is better placed to be accountable to the people for whom this duty is to be performed? So at that level, you see a bit of a problem. And that's why a lot of people are saying we don't have a federal system, or we need true federalism. Because simply, the center is so powerful, and a lot of governors hide under that to say that, we can't do anything, this belongs to the federal government. I think that is a problem. I think we need to look at those lists again and see to what extent we can allow the state government much more level of autonomy, much more responsibilities, much more resources, but that will be underpinned on a stricter framework of accountability. Because we don't have to kid ourselves about the excesses of our state governors. So yes, it's good to give the state more powers. It's good to give them more resources, but we also have to impose on them some level of accountability. And I think in that kind of a redesign, we need to again go back to this issue of immunity of elected governors and the president. I think we should think of a qualified immunity that makes it possible for us to hold governors, to hold the president accountable while in office, when it becomes blatantly obvious that the person is undermining the state or the federal government or the resources of the country. So I think there's the need to look at the exclusive list again. I think, again, that every section of Nigeria claims marginalization. And that is a bit illustrative. It means that something is not working. It means, in my view, that governance is not working. And so we also have to think a little bit more carefully that we don't mix these issues up. We don't mix bad governance and marginalization as one item. A lot of the things we complain about are a result of bad governance and not marginalization. Because in those instances, instead of going to the duty bearers to ask them to do things properly, we move away from them, outsource the source of the problem, and begin to attack people who ordinarily are not the creators of our crisis. So the issue of bad governance, which has become a perennial problem, the problem of leadership, the fact that people who are elected into offices are not working for the people, but are interested in working for themselves.
I'll pose you this question then. If you were to look at it in terms of percentages then, if our problem is 100%, what percentage of it would you say is bad governance, and what percentage would you say is because of the structure that we operate?
I will answer this with an illustration. If you look at the United States, everybody's clear about what the American dream is. If you look at the Constitution, if you go through the Federalist Papers and the arguments that gave rise to the U.S. Constitution, you could understand the underlying principle of what they were trying to do. They wanted to create a union, one that protects rights, that allows the various states to develop, but at the same time, creating a framework where they can complement each other in terms of strength to create a stronger and a better union. They also understood that confederation didn't work for them. And so they were clear on the kind of system they were trying to build. In our own case, what is the underlying principle of our Constitution? What is the underlying principle of Nigeria? I don't know it. Because at every turn, people are confused about what we are. As a nation, what binds us together? We need a leadership that defines the Nigeria dream. We need a leadership that gives us an idea that being a Nigerian is about being this. We've not been able to find that.
But you just told me, even though you haven't quite answered my question about percentages, and I will still come to it, you did tell me that from your experience working with Nigerians or working with the people you have worked with, a lot of people believe in Nigeria. And I asked you, why do they believe in Nigeria? What do you think then influences, if we have not been able to define a Nigerian dream, what makes people then believe in this country?
Because that's what else? If not Nigeria, then what? That is a wrong premise to build nationhood. Building a nationhood of convenience, this is all we have.
You think that that's the reason? I mean, for God's sake, we talk about how our leaders, when they get there, some people become very sectional. It's all about their... And now we're beginning to hear groups saying, well, we want alternatives. We think that we can do this on our own. We want to be on our own. Haven't you heard arguments like that?
We've heard arguments about people being on their own. And my counter-argument is that those elements that make Nigeria problematic for all of us will most likely exist in those our own enclaves we're looking at. The issue is not necessarily about the fact that we are Nigeria or that we are states. The issue is that people who were elected into offices are not accountable to the people for whom that elected them. And the people who elected them are not making proper demands on them. Because if you go to the states, and I like to make this example all the time, and the resources that go to our states, if 80% of the resources are judiciously utilized across the 36 states of this federation, we'll be having a different story.
So if that is the case, then what parts, back to that question, what part of the problem, is a certain percentage?
It is difficult.
What part is the structure?
It is difficult.
Structural.
It's difficult to apply percentages, but we can.
But it will be helpful if you can.
It is impossible.
It's not impossible.
To apply percentages.
This is not the first time I'm asking that question. Quite a number of people have given very interesting answers. I'm just wondering what part of it will be bad governance.
Well, for me, I think the structure is a bit of a problem. We need to interrogate it further. I've given some examples of some of the areas I think we need to, to tweak and allow the states to manage their resources to a reasonable extent, develop their people based on their peculiar needs. I think not having that is part of the problem. I also think bad governance is part of the problem. It's difficult for me to say it's 50% or 20%, but I think a combination of both is a huge problem for us as a country. Now,
is it 50-50? Would you say they equally take roughly about the same amount, or you think they're structurally...
I've not done the maths. I've not done the maths. But I think both count. Because if you have a functional state government, because the viability of a lot of our states are in question, we are not sure that absent of federal allocation, those states can survive. It's a problem. But let's just even assume the states are working very well and they're doing what they're supposed to do. Yes, we can stop, we need to restructure, we need to give them more powers and all of that. But it wouldn't mean that we'll be in this kind of situation where practically everybody in the country is upset and angry because things are not working. So I think it's the function of both. Yes, the structures are not as good as we want them, but bad governance and bad leadership is playing a big role in making Nigerians this angry.